Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Welcome, everyone, to Project Management Office Hours, the #1 live project management radio show in the U.S., broadcasting to you from the Phoenix Business Radio X studios in Tempe, Arizona. I'm your host, Joe Puz, PMO Joe, and for the next hour, we'll be talking project management with our special guests. We're obviously very grateful to have PM Master Prep as a sponsor for our show. We're super excited with Scott and his team and their support and the great offers that they have provided to all of our listeners. So let's hear from Scott.
If you're studying for the PMP exam, how excited are you to memorize the 756 pages of the PMBOK? You see, when I was studying, I realized that cramming facts in my head wasn't only not going to help me pass, but it wasn't going to make me a better project manager. So I abandoned what the experts told me, and I created a method that delivered an above-target score without memorizing a thing. You heard me, memorizing nothing. The power of my method is in 3 simple changes that help you make and cement all the connections you need to ace the exam's situational questions. I've distilled my method into a book, e-course, simulator, and training class that transforms how you or your team learn PMP. My name is Scott Payne, and I want you to be successful in the PMP exam. Go to pmmasterprep.com and learn how my PMP training method works, and use the code PMOJOE to receive 20% off every product that will make you battle ready for the PMP exam.
It's so great to have Scott and his team with us. Obviously, having a sponsor is great, and be able to pass that on to our listeners is also awesome. So to have a 20% off from all the services they offer, please go out to pmmasterprep.com, use the promo code PMOJOE, and help support your career development by visiting PM Master Prep and all they have to offer. Also, of course, the PMO Squad is our sponsor as well, and they are the home of the purpose-driven PMO. You can get an in-depth review of the purpose-driven PMO going out to projectmanagement.com. We did a webinar a couple weeks back, and I'll proudly boast that it's now the #1 PMO webinar on projectmanagement.com. So that's been well received, and glad that people are enjoying it. You can also go out to the PMOsquad.com website and see all of our services of how we can help you overcome your delivery and project management challenges. Also want to mention that later this afternoon, we're going to have a first for VP MMA. For those who have been a regular listener of the show, you know that VP MMA is the Veteran Project Manager Mentoring Alliance. We've been fortunate on the show to be surprised by guests such as Kenneth Stennis and Warwick Pond with donations. And we have taken that proof of concept of a mentoring program within our industry and turned it into a nonprofit organization. And this afternoon will be our first board of directors meeting with that organization. And we have a diverse board from across the U.S. that is prepared to help us scale that nonprofit organization into something larger than it is today. We have a golf event that we are partners with the Phoenix PMI chapter coming up in September. They've allowed us to partner, so we're participating in that event with them. And then the other co-founder, Eric Wright, and I will be featured in International Project Management Day by IIL in November. We are going to be talking about VP MMA as part of that. So super excited for everything that we have ongoing with that now and to see where it's going to go and grow as we continue to scale that. Now, on to our show today. I am super excited to have our guests with us, Kathryn Halpin and Nicolas Breeson. Thank you both for joining me.
Thank you, Joe.
Yes, thank you, Joe. We're so appreciative.
And Nicolas, you are joining us from Germany, so great to have you spend your evening with us, as it's I think around 8 o'clock or so over there. Can you Can you take a minute and introduce yourself and to our listeners?
Yeah, sure. Then hi everyone. So first of all, thank you very much for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to talk to you from Europe, and as you said, so I'm from Munich, Germany. My name is Nicolas Bresson, and I'm the CEO and one of the co-founder of Steerio. And Steerio is basically a digital platform that helps to make teamwork better and especially project work better. And basically what does it mean? It means that we help project teams to share feedback through the platform, and with the combination of data science, we help them to achieve better results together and to create a better project experience. So that's about me.
That's awesome. Thanks for joining us. And I've had a trial run on the tool, and it's really powerful and impressive. So I'm looking forward to digging into that a little deeper as we go along.
Sure.
And Kathryn Halpin, thank you so much for joining us in studio. Please take a moment to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Joe. So my name is Kathryn Halpin. I grew up in Vicksburg, Mississippi, but I'm Phoenix-based now. And in 1995, I founded my firm to try to fill a void that I saw every day in my CPA career. I could see business leaders focused solely on the financial metrics and the legal issues, and they never even occurred to them to address any people issues. So the people issues are just was a big void. So since 1995, I've been consulting with business leaders trying to help them build what I call alignment. Alignment in their project management teams, alignment in their executive teams, alignment at their board of directors level, alignment in the boiler room. I say I can work from the boiler room to the boardroom to try to build that team alignment. Because if we're going to get the results with our projects, it's going to be because we've brought these teams together.
That's right. Awesome. I thank you so much, Kathryn, and really looking forward to digging into that. I've taken the CVI, so I'm a little familiar with one of the tools that you use, and looking forward to talking about that as well.
Great.
So, Nicolas, you had mentioned Steerio, or how do you pronounce that correctly?
Steerio.
Steerio.
Steerio.com. Yeah.
So Steerio.com. And what's the story behind that, right? Because you're not necessarily a software developer by trade, right? I mean, what's your background that led to that, and what's the story of Steerio?
Yeah, so the story is that I used to be a project management professional. Basically, I used to work in management consulting for several years. Used to work for Deloitte in different countries, based in Germany, but doing projects in France, in Japan, in the Netherlands, and in the UK. And actually, so I used to work on digital topics, but also on large-scale transformation. And actually, so from this experience, after having conducted several projects for different clients, I remarked that there was need, and that makes perfectly the link from the topic from Katharine, there was a need for better alignments within team or continuous alignments. And because actually, so if you run a project, there is always, when you have more than 50, 100, 150% involved, you always have difficulties with communications, finding a clear vision and how to bring people together. And we think that's, and I say, okay, gosh, so I have these challenges that I see on several projects, and I talk to different colleagues, different consultants, and we all had the same issues on our project. And I say, there might be a pattern. And who says pattern? Who say, okay, there might be the opportunity to collect data on that and to create intelligence. And that's what we're doing with Steerio. So the idea behind that is to create a collective intelligence around project management, where people can share their best practices and exchange feedback to perform better together. And so that's why I decided to drop my job as a consultant, actually, and to start this new adventure with one other former consultant, Damien, and a data scientist, Thomas. And that's how we started.
So for those who are looking for additional information about this, and I've, as I said, used the tool, essentially it's a survey-based tool, right, that you would share with your team members, and they,
exactly,
on a recurring basis, would be able to respond to questions that allow the project manager or the sponsor or others to be able to collect information on how the project is going and how the team is performing.
Exactly. So because one of the main issue is that how are you doing to share to have a transparent view about your project, about your initiatives, about your team, how they are doing? Do you have clear objectives? Is there any issue with stakeholder alignments? Is the communication fluid between all stakeholders? That's all items that people used to discuss at the coffee machine on the Friday afternoon before going into the weekend. but they do not share it with everyone. And we think this is a pity, and this should be shared with everyone, so that's the project can do better collectively.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, having used that tool, it was great to be able to get feedback from team members without having to go kind of prod them for it, without having to, because when they would talk to me, I knew who was giving me the feedback. There's a sense of anonymity to this, is right, to be able to get more honest feedback.
Exactly. And actually, so as you said, so when you're on a client engagements, there is always, so every day you ask you the question, okay, how can I better serve my clients, and what can we do differently to improve the project? And actually this tool enables you to get this feedback and to react, as you say, so on a weekly basis, almost continuously, I would say.
And the beauty of that, right, is we're able to make sure that we have the right people in the right roles, right? We can find out where we have challenges within our project. Maybe they're people challenge, process challenge, or other. And Kathryn, I know what you do as well is all about putting the right people in the right roles.
That's correct, Joe. That's correct. So I became a CPA because my dad in Mississippi was a CPA. They didn't do any career counseling at the University of Southern Mississippi when I was there. So I was a round peg trying to fit into a square hole, and I kept changing jobs thinking I would fit in better. Okay, well, I don't like tax. Maybe I like internal audit better. Or I don't like internal consulting. Maybe I like external consulting better. And my mom in Mississippi supported me in staying stuck. When I would have these workplace challenges, she would say, it's not my fault. And I would say, you're right, Mom, it's not my fault. But it was my fault because I was a square peg trying to fit in a round hole. So I'm an example now of somebody who found their niche. I love people. I love hearing their stories. And I believe everybody's, like the Gallup people say, everybody's strengths are unique and enduring. And if we can figure out what people's strengths are and either tweak their job or move them across the hall into an entirely different job, that we can take a C player and make them an A player.
And how do you do that?
Well, initially, when I started my firm in 1995, I didn't have any tools except my own intuition and my love of people. So I would hear the leadership team ranting and raving about a poor guy. Let's call him Bob. And everybody would have all kind of complaints about Bob. And I said, well, let me go meet with Bob, interview Bob, see if I can get any kind of sense of what's going on. And after a 45-minute meeting, I could come back and I could say to them, well, if you could give Bob more of these kinds of tasks and fewer of these kinds of tasks, I think he'd be a lot easier to work with. He'd be a lot more productive. He would start meeting deadlines because he loves doing this work. So initially, I just did it intuitively. But in 2009, a group out of Seattle, Tukwila, Washington, actually, Lynn Taylor's the founder of something he calls Taylor Protocols, and he has a pattern matching algorithm based tool that you select just out of these random words. You select which ones resonate with you the most. And in 8 to 10 minutes, it gives me, if we get the full profile, it gives me a 15 to 17 page report and a 3-minute video about what a person's strengths are and, more importantly, what their potential growth opportunities are. And how these people got my attention was because they asked me to take the test. And in the first 15 minutes of the debrief, they had nailed me not just for my strengths, but for my growth opportunities. Yeah. And I've used it every day since then.
So this, again, I don't know, I think I say this every show, but the reason I love my show is because in the project management space, we're exposed to the common tools and training repeatedly, right? How to build a schedule, how to do a risk log, how to manage issues, how to deal with troublesome stakeholders. But this show gives us exposure within our community to tools that can really elevate our profession, right?
Yes.
Something like Steerio, something like the Taylor assessment.
Right.
As project managers, now we can start getting insights to really know why our projects are operating the way they are and the people why they are.
Why the people, because when people don't feel valued and appreciated, they can become irrational, or because we're all addicted to our devices nowadays, it's so easy for us to get into reactive mode and stay in reactive mode.
That's right.
Get out of thinking strategically, thinking proactively. It's just not a good situation in our corporate workplace today, in my opinion.
The whole thing is about being present and so to augment the potential of people. And actually that's a nice role of the technology, actually. So with the development over the past years, Of course, and actually, so I'm the first one to spend too much time on my smartphone. But actually, so you have also the opportunity to use that data to be better and to augment your performance and to enhance the performance of the human. And actually, that's the example that you mentioned, Katharine. It's a very good one. So with the help of the technology, being able to identify the strengths and the growth opportunity of a person, and from the Steerio side, so being able to pinpoint what is doing great and what could be improved. This is really game changing, I think, so in the project management profession.
Yes, and Nicolas, I would agree, and I think your tool Steerio allows us to walk our talk. Here we're managing projects for our internal or external clients. And we're asking them to get out of their comfort zone, do difficult things, have uncomfortable conversations to move this project along. But their health checks, your weekly health checks, give us a chance to walk our talk as internal or external consultants.
And I'm wondering, Nicolas, have you found anything from the data yet? Any themes, or what are some common items that come out of the data that project managers should be aware of?
Yeah, so actually, and it might not be surprising. So what we see from the data is that the parts related. So actually, so when we think about project teams, what we see from our data is that usually there are no issue about I would say the technical skills from the people, and more about the collaboration aspects, the communication, alignments, and for example, an example is. When we saw that several times, is that you can have on a project the difficulty to get the availability of some stakeholders, for example. Mm-hmm. And this is something that we see on numerous transformation projects that are on our platform, is that the availability of the stakeholders and the fact that they are briefed when they come into the meetings, that are some aspects that pop up and that are very interesting, meaning that sometimes it's not only a team in itself, but the team in its context, meaning the team in the organizations.
And just think how powerful that is, because prior to tools that we use today, right, the project manager would walk into the sponsor and say, hey, the team needs you, the team needs that. And there's no supporting evidence. There's no data. There's no documentation of that.
Right.
Now with these tools we have, you can bring in the tool with the survey results and show that sponsor that this is the feedback directly from the team, and how powerful that is a message to that sponsor that the team needs them.
And 78% of the people agreed on it, or 98% of the people.
That's right.
Right. They need more face time with him. They need more clarity about his objectives. They need more clarity about how we're going to measure success on this project.
I think it's a really powerful tool, and I know it was helpful for me on my engagement where I was using that as well.
Yes.
So I'm interested a little bit more about this Taylor system, right? I think CVI is
Core Values Index is what it's called. We refer to it as a CVI. And we're measuring people's innate nature. So it's not measuring people's professional or personal maturity. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it'll indicate that there's a growth opportunity and they've already overcome that. For instance, I have a CIO client in a big company, and she's a high innovator. Most people in technology are high innovators. They love to solve problems, assess and solve problems. So, because she spent her first 25 years in her career at IBM, she's so disciplined and she's able to bring whatever strength is needed. And that's my definition of leadership, being able to assess a situation, a project, and know what's missing and be able to bring that strength until everybody else can buy in. Yes, we need to either make decisions more quickly, or we need to focus on the teams and the relationships and the vision for the project, or we do need to spend more time assessing and solving, or the fourth strength is the people that are focus on the data and the metrics and the information. What does the information tell us? What does the data tell us? So we think each of us has some mix of all four of those strengths, and we use these pattern matching algorithms to give you not only your raw score, a numerical score between 0 and 36, but also what Lynn Taylor calls the weighted energy preference, which I describe as roughly the amount of time and focus and energy you're bringing that strength.
Yeah. Again, to share with the audience my own experience, right? It took me probably less than 3 minutes to do the survey.
Right.
And I'm always skeptical about these things, right? It's I'm gonna do these, and it's not going to be anything related to who I am. When I got the results, I said, geez, I mean, people always tell me that, and maybe I should pay more attention because now this random test that I took, but it pointed the same information
and it
out.
was free. It's 100% free.
Yeah.
Now I have a paid version, of course, I use with my clients, and that gives me the 15 to 17 page report. But even the free version gives you so much rich data about yourself, or more importantly, about your colleagues.
Yeah, we had Ruth Pierce on a prior show, and Ruth uses strength-based character traits similarly to be able to understand your team and utilize their strengths to help them perform well together.
Right.
And I could see this as another complementary tool that if the team were to participate in this, you're going to be able to understand how each of them are wired and how they would be able to operate together.
Right. I'm going to do a webinar tomorrow morning, 90 minutes for an executive leadership team at a university. And the president of the university and the leader of the HR organization that brought me in, they're just thrilled already to have this data. It just made so much sense to them to see everybody's strengths profile.
So I love that. And Nicolas, we keep going back and forth between your tools because they're so connected. I love this. Yours is a continuous feedback loop, right? It's ongoing. It's not just a one-time event, right?
Exactly. Because the idea is that we think a lot about getting feedback, and it's always associated with performance review and rewards and so on. And actually, there is a sacralized moment around the feedback, and we think at Steerio that it shouldn't be, meaning that the feedback is something that should be given so casually, oftenly, and continuously, so that you can always find something to improve or which is very important, also to celebrate. And actually, that's also very interesting because we talk a lot about the strengths, and this is then, and I think we need to highlight that. So we need to play people's strengths, but also to celebrate what is doing well, to engage, and in order to motivate people, because at the end of the day, we don't care about weaknesses if the strengths are much stronger. And when we think about leaders are working in teams with their teams, and we always said that nobody is perfect, but a team can be, and it's really the objectives.
Yes, I love that.
So Steerio, can you use that on your phone, or is it just browser based? How do people access the tool itself?
Yeah, actually, it's very easy. It's a web app, meaning that you can use it on a desktop or on your smartphone. It doesn't make any difference, and you don't have to pre-install any app. You can just go directly on the websites, sign up, and within 5 minutes you can start exchanging feedback with your team.
Yes,
so
that's my
experience. Really as you go. And I think so, Katharine, you're a new user for us. Yeah?
Yes, but I love the health check. I love the quality and the depth of the questions it was asking me to score my team on.
Well, and what I liked was it was weekly, so I was able to trend information over time, and it wasn't just a snapshot, right? Oftentimes today we'll go in and poll our team to see where they're at the moment, and then we get so busy that we don't come back to that.
Right, and we don't even respond to them. We ask them for the feedback, and then we just bury that data. And then the next time they're not motivated to give us any more feedback because we didn't take any action. We didn't even brief them on what the results of the data showed. So it's so powerful, Nicolas, that you've got a mechanism just to do that continuously, weekly, I believe, those health checks.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah. We really believe on the fact that if you continuously monitor how the team is doing, then you can get so much better result on the long term. And instead of having a lot of action plans and to-dos that are never implemented, the idea is if the team can provide you feedback 1 week after, or 2 weeks, or 1 month later, then as a leader you are committed to change something and to hear them. And also the team should also be an important player into that, meaning that the team is not only there to grade, I would say, so the project, but also to bring solutions. Because here we talk about collective intelligence. How can we as a group perform better?
And that's what's so desperately needed in the workplace today, giving people a mechanism so they can take ownership and feel safe to say, I have an idea, or more importantly, I have a concern. And this is the platform to do that. Well, my experience is when a project is going to go south, it's going to either blow up or not achieve the, forecasted goals. There were always key indicators and red flags. The question is, can that executive sponsor and those champions and those team leaders, can they see those? Or is it some, frontline employee that sees those key indicators?
Yeah, you're totally right. Most of the time, it's always insider exchange between two persons and saying, okay, hey, the objectives are not clear, or we will never deliver the next milestone, or there is an issue with the IT developments. And I'm sure that the project will crash in 3 months. And there is nothing worse that's 3 months later, if the project crashes, that the same person say, okay, I told you and I knew it. And actually, it should never happen.
Right.
And that's not something you're going to find in a project schedule.
Right.
Right.
Those
And that's
flags won't show up.
And the traditional tools that we use, though, that's why often historically project management had gotten a bad name, because you didn't see it coming. Mm-hmm. You had the project marked green, even though there was something brewing, and it was like, well, it was a people problem. I didn't think we were going to run into it. I didn't think it was going to fully come to root, right?
Right. We were in denial or even delusional.
Yeah. So that's why these tools are so powerful to be able to help us get that on a continuous basis. So I love that.
And I love what you said, Nicolas, about celebrating the successes too, because I tell my clients it's so much easier to build on what is working instead of beating ourselves up about what's not working. We have to be grounded in reality, of course, so we're not delusional. But let's also celebrate those successes. Helps us identify people's strengths, helps us identify patterns and trends, things that we can operationalize or make standard operating procedures.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all the topic about self-awareness, and I think this is something you're working on. And you wrote a book about alignments and especially and a big part is about self-alignment, right?
Correct, Nicolas. Thank you for bringing that up. So the name of my book is I have two books, but the primary book is Alignment for Success, bringing out the best in yourself, your teams, and your company. Bill George is a former CEO of Medtronic, and now he's at Harvard and lecturing and writing, and I've got all his books. I love him. He says when he's seen leaders not be successful, it was never because they couldn't lead a team. It was because they couldn't lead themselves. So he and I have coined the phrase self-leadership. And it means knowing what your values are, knowing what your strengths are, having the self-awareness that you described, Nicolas, having the ability to self-manage, not get triggered. We're all going to get triggered, but can we recover in 20 nanoseconds or 20 minutes or 20 days? Because when we're triggered, we're in reactive mode. And when we're in reactive mode, someone else is controlling our destiny. We're not in control of our own destiny anymore. And so this self-leadership is just critical. I do so much work. When I first started doing this work, I was an independent contractor with a national firm. And the guy that founded that firm said, I get more unsolicited positive feedback about you, Kathryn, than any other person that's ever been in my firm. And I said, well, that's because I focus on this self-leadership concept in every discussion with every client and team. I want to know, what are they doing to take care of themselves? Because I can't do it for them if they're not investing in themselves.
Yeah, that personal awareness and awareness of our team can be so powerful. Steve Fulmer, again, another former guest we had on, talked a lot about that and how understanding we operate and what triggers our decision-making process and how we react to that can all be so powerful.
So powerful.
Obviously when we have these sorts of discussions, everyone's thinking, wow, this is great. Everything's so positive. But what are some actual success stories, right? What are something that maybe we can hear you talk about and then relate to experiences that we've had as well? And Kathryn, have you had successes with this? Oh,
gosh, yes. Well, with closely held companies, smaller businesses, say with 50 to 500 employees, or even smaller, I've been able to help those business owners grow the value of that company 2 to 3x consistently. And it's because we get the right people in the right roles, and then we create an environment where people feel safe to say, I have a concern, or I have an idea, or I think we could innovate. I think we could start a whole new line of business here. So in a small company, it's real easy to measure the shareholder value. I've also done work in Fortune 500 and extremely large healthcare and the biosciences with scientists. And I had a scientist in a very prestigious organization that I was working with. He was not well suited. He was phenomenally good at managing his team of 13 researchers. he was horrible as the division chair in this academic medical organization. And I kept saying, if you just relate to the other physicians as you relate to your scientists, it'd be so much better. But he wasn't able to make that leap. And so he self-selected out of the firm. Out of the medical organization. There was no drama. There was no trauma. There was no chaos. There was no performance improvement plans, no crucial conversations. He saw it for himself. And he's a researcher. There's only 2 or 3 places maybe in the whole United States he could go. And he had to find somebody that would take him and his 13 people. But within a very short amount of time, self-selected out. So I see people step up and I see people step out. And it's because the leadership team, I help them be more articulate in communicating what their expectations are and then negotiating those expectations and putting more metrics in place.
And as I think about these and the details of all of this, right? And one thing I kept come back to, Nicolas, you had said a phrase earlier that I think I didn't want it to slip by because it did to this point, was you said augmented project teams earlier.
Yeah.
And I've not heard that before. I want to dig in on that. What is augmented project teams?
The idea of augmented project team is that if you combine the people experience and their expertise with the power of data, we believe that you can achieve much better results and much better working experience. And that's the concept behind Steerio, because you know that if we gather data on the platform from the team, the idea is that we have 50, 100, 150 other teams that are using the tool, and meaning that using that we can identify potential risk on your project. Meaning that if we identify that from a week to another there is an issue with the decision making within the meeting, we can clearly spot it and then say to the manager, pay attention to that, and here are the best practices or what's expert or people in your situation did, and this is kind of experience that comes collectively, and that's really augments your decision making and your leadership skill set as a project leader, and that's what we call augmented project teams, because the team is enhanced through the exchange of the data and have the dialogue that generates real value to the organization.
So I think across the common PPM platforms that are out there, PlanView, Primavera, Clarity, and others, and we get lots of project data, right? How long does a task? And everyone keeps talking within the industry about artificial intelligence is coming and it's going to help us with our estimates and our schedules and it's going to be better. But what they're not taking into account is the project is a collection of people performing on work.
Yeah.
And I love your tool is actually collecting data on the people. And that's actually driving the performance of our projects more so than the schedules, right? I mean, I love the fact that the augmented project team is going to give us data that can help us be more effective, better than how well are our estimates.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, we are used to conduct projects, right? And we know that we, at the beginning of a project, we do a very nice master plan with a very detailed Gantt charts. And actually, when we start the project, after 2 weeks, the plans is not running as it was planned to do. And the project, and there is always challenges, and this is actually so normal. And actually, that's the role of the project leader, to take those challenges and to solve the problem. And it comes from the people. And the typical, I would say, hardcore tools do not help you to do that, because the solution can only come from cooperation and from the people that are working on the project.
Yeah, and there's, even within the Agile world, right? I'm not saying Agile is a replacement for traditional project management, because I think they can complement each other in the right situations.
Yeah. Yes.
But the 2-week sprints, right, in the daily stand-ups, is you're thinking that you're getting that same feedback, but that's all face-to-face, right? And this tool gives you the opportunity to do that anonymously to get probably more real data.
Yes, more meaningful data, more accurate data, more data that's grounded in reality.
So, jumping back to you, Kathryn, I feel like I got a tennis match on this one, because I love both these tools. What the details within the CVI is essentially there's a quadrant.
Yes, 4 different strengths. And we call them builder, the people that decide and do 1,000 times a day. So they're quick starts, they're making a lot of decisions. And the merchant, the people, like you and I, Joe. And then the innovators, that's our second strength. We're assessing and solving. We can walk in the room and start assessing and solving. And then most importantly are those, what we call the bankers, the people that have the information, the knowledge, the data. And each of these strengths has something motivating factor. And the bankers with the data and the information, the metrics, they're motivated by transparency. They want that information to be available to everyone. Mm-hmm. Where you and I want to talk about the hard facts. That's why you have your radio show, and that's why I do the work I do. That's why I had to leave Mississippi. I didn't want to just be caught up in a lot of cocktail party, mean girl chatter. Yeah. I want to talk about important stuff. The builders want to get stuff done, and the innovators can assess and solve, although many people in our world today are innovators, especially in the technology field. And so Lynn and I say that the only valuable wisdom is what he calls reductionist wisdom, the simplest, most elegant solution, to stay in the conversation long enough to be able to synthesize all the possible solutions down to the simplest, most elegant solution.
So if I take the survey, yes. I get my results back,
yes.
and I don't know what to do with it, right? Yes. So what if I don't believe this isn't right, or whatever scenario you're confronted with? Yes. For me, it seemed like it lined up pretty well, which again I was kind of surprised with, but I suppose I shouldn't be.
Yes.
What do you do?
Well, you call me 602-266-1961 is my phone number, and I'll walk you through it. We'll both pull it up and do a shared screen session over Zoom, and I'll show you what the data shows and how to understand it. And I'll give you the key, because the key doesn't come with the tool. I have to email you that. And I carry them around with me in my bag. Like I was able to just give you one when I arrived here this morning. So the key is critical to understanding the full report.
So I got a question about that. So, Katharine, do you use this tool to create teams actually?
Yeah. So often, a CEO or a new leader in a big organization will bring me in to help them build out their team. So I'll assess everybody's strengths already on the team, and we'll see what we're missing. Like this team I'm meeting with tomorrow by webinar, because they're all over the country. They have it's 7 people. They have 3 builders, 3 bankers, and 3 innovators, and they're a little weak on the merchants. But I said to the president of the university yesterday, you've been around the block. You didn't get to be the president of the university, easily. So you've developed that. You've matured, and my tool doesn't measure that maturity. So she said, I've always been, acknowledged for my people skills. I said, well, of course, you probably learned in your summer job in high school that you had to get stuff done through the people. So even though that wasn't her innate strength, she has matured. But sometimes people haven't matured, and then it shows us in black and white.
And of course, we live in a business-driven world, right? We all have to recognize that. So, there's going to be questions of ROI, right? What am I going to get out of using this tool?
Right. Oh, just exponential results. Well, that's how you grow the company 2 to 3x, because you create an environment where everybody's in the right role based on their strengths. That just automatically creates an environment where everybody feels safer to innovate. Everybody feels safer to take some measured risk. Everybody feels safer to say, I have a concern, or I see a red flag. Everybody feels safer to acknowledge each other. And so there's more trust, and there's more mutual respect. And it's easier then to get that shared vision. If you don't have a shared vision, you don't have a team. My definition of a high-performing team is everybody has the same shared vision, and everybody has a commitment to each other's individual success, not just the team success, but I want Bob and Betty Sue. I want all these people to be successful. In addition, of course, I want myself to be successful. And that's what's wrong in the world today. And whether it's politics or education or business, it's so easy to just put your own self-interest above the team's interest or the organization's interest. I see that all the time. But this helps people build that mutual respect and trust so that you're not at risk for that.
Yeah, within the purpose-driven PMO, there's some elements of what you're talking about that we've embraced, obviously. And one of the things that we tied onto is a quote from Vince Lombardi, where he had said, success demands singleness of purpose.
Yeah.
And when everybody on the team is working towards a common purpose, you can achieve more than you can as individuals, correct?
We'll move further, faster,
exactly.
is what I call it. Right.
Nicolas, another thing I'm wondering about you is obviously you're over in Germany now, and you've worked all across Europe and into Asia as well. Is Steerio just a European tool? Who is that tool available for?
Actually, so per definition, this is a digital tool, meaning that it's available for everyone. You can actually, so if you're based in the US, you can use it, as you said. So you try it with your team and with your client, and Katharine is also using it. And so it's without borders. Meaning, so the thing is that, so for the time being, we offer the tool in English, in French, and very, very soon. So we are rolling out the German version, actually. And so this is the next step for us, is that, so because we have a strong customer base in France, working with large consultancies and corporates, and we think there might have some opportunity to expand in Germany, actually, where I am based, actually.
Well, that's all vision-based talk. Is there anything else you can share with us about the vision that you have for Steerio?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So as we said, so the tool is currently all about feedback and giving the opportunity to open the dialogue within the team. And the next step for us is, of course, integrating machine learning algorithm into that. So because as people are providing feedback, there is a lot of resources to use to identify which topics are emerging for in which industries and projects. And the next step then is to go into the coaching aspect, because when you have a person in a project context and in an organizational context which provide feedbacks to the team, maybe you can help him or her to have more impacts on his or her day-to-day activities. So the coaching perspective is very interesting to us, and on the much longer term, being able to develop, I would say, a kind of technical expertise on the topic, meaning that, for example, if you are running an IT project, an SAP project, then Steerio can provide you insight about that. And if the tool is not sufficient, because actually, it's, as we say, the tool will never replace people, then we can help you to find the right experts to help you on your project. That might be a possibility in the future. So that means that in the future, the Steerio will be a kind of dematerialized digital consultancy.
I love it.
Love it.
As you were talking, of course, I felt like I was being transported into a Bond movie, because we were hearing the sirens in the background, and it's such a distinct sound compared to sirens here in the States. So I was transported for a moment into a Bond film as the sirens were going in the background. I love that. And of course, contrast that to when Elyse Stevens was on from Australia, and she had tropical birds chirping in the background during the majority of the show. So it's great when we have our remote guests, so we can bring the environment onto the show with them. That's awesome. And I'm really
next time I will offer you the European birds instead of the Syrian birds. That might be more glamorous.
No, I love it. It's great. That's and that's why I love doing a live show and not a recorded podcast, right? Because we get to, life is real. Life is live, right? Podcasts are just a capture of time, much like your surveys, right? It's a capture of real life.
Exactly.
And that's why we do the show live. So that's awesome. Now, Kathryn, coming back to you. Right, I took that test. It was 3 minutes. I was able to use that tool. If I'm a leadership team and I've got 10, 15, 20, whatever team members, how quickly can I turn this around and start using it within my team?
Well, these clients tomorrow, I met them less than a month ago, and I asked, the HR person was the person to reach out. They were referred to me by another client. I asked her to take it, and and she said she wanted to introduce me to the president. So I asked them both to take it, and they both were blown away by their own reports, and they could see how they work so well together, and they could see what their opportunities for the two of them to work even more effectively together. One's a banker merchant, and one's a builder banker. And she leads with that builder, of course. But she's, like I said earlier, she's grown and matured. And so she brings plenty of merchant too. And so then I did the rest of the team, and they were totally blown away. So as soon as people take it, I can pop that into a spreadsheet to show them. And it's so helpful to be able to see everybody's profiles together, their raw numbers and their two primary strengths, and then I give everybody the link to the video and to the full report in a PDF, so it's easy to print and share, and then I facilitate the discussion with them. How can they build on it? And if they were going to add somebody else to their team, this team was thinking about bringing somebody back. And so they said, it'd be good to have that person take the test too. Well, guess what? She's a merchant builder, and the merchant is what's the least strong on the team. So I said, perfect. Mm-hmm. And merchant builders tend to be really great leaders because they're focused on the deliverables, but they do it in a way that their people feel like they're their best friend.
And, I think a lot of listeners out there are probably familiar with like Myers-Briggs and Strength Finders.
Yes.
And this
Those are all
is
great.
Another tool that gives a different perspective on us as individuals.
And it's based on the algorithms, where the Myers-Briggs is from the 1940s. I'm pretty sure it's not based on any algorithms. And the Strengths Finders, I've taken it several times, and I always get value. But for me, somebody who's so passionate about so many things, I couldn't narrow it down to 3 strengths. I had all 26, and the book says that's fine. And I took the online report assessment too. But where do I go with 26 strengths?
Mm-hmm.
I need to be able to narrow that down.
Well, and that's, again, within the quadrant, right? The max you could have would be all 4, right? But that's not even a possibility, right? It's just you have a dominant and then a secondary?
Yes, but we do find people are dominant in 2 strengths.
Okay.
Uh-huh. We call that profound, yes.
Profound,
yes.
I love that. And so if I'm at an organization, my team is using this, what sort of, we've talked about the business ROI, but me as an individual working within an organization, what sort of personal impact can something like this have on me?
Oh my gosh, it's just immeasurable. It's priceless. You just think about Kathryn trying to be a CPA. I never fit in. I was always focused on, my values are continuous improvement because I'm that innovator, and seeing the big picture because of my merchant strength. And so I was always saying to my colleagues, we could do this project faster, better, smarter if we just tweaked it this way. And in that environment, they would always say, well, Kathryn, we've always done it this way. And there wasn't really a lot of room to innovate or create. And so I was always so frustrated. And so as a result, the unhealthy merchant will become a manipulator. It was so hard for me to see that when I first took the test. I was like, I can't see myself being the manipulator. But I did remember clearly going from cubicle to cubicle and office to office, gossiping about the team leader or the boss, trying to get everybody to agree with me that guy was in fact a total idiot.
Of course, right?
So that's how my unhealthy merchant, manifested itself, because I was in the wrong role. So now I never do that. I'm rarely at risk for doing that. I'm still at risk for having the conversation in my head, that somebody's an idiot. But it's a bank teller, grocery store clerk. It's not my boss. It's not my client. It's not my colleagues. So that's just one example of, the power of somebody getting in the right role, doing something that's in alignment with their values. It doesn't feel like work. I feel like I haven't worked a day since 1995.
And I think back to the introductions, Nicolas, and was what Kathryn just said, is right. You created this because you felt there was a need that you were solving, right? And that's how your company came to be. You had a personal identification that you now are solving.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so. That's how most of the ideas comes up. And it's based on your experience. That was an experience for myself, but also I decided to start it with my 2 co-founders because there was a shared pain across all consultants, across different consultancies, which have their own methodology, their own tool, very bright people. But actually, so why do we always encounter the same challenges about team alignments and project and project work? And that's how it started. Yes, you're right.
Yeah, I think that's every entrepreneur. What we do, we see a need in a corporate culture or a large business, and we say, "Hey, I think I can come up with some solutions to that, fill that void."
Yeah, and I've Kathryn, you had mentioned you haven't felt like you've worked a day, and I said the same thing all the time about the PMO squad. Right, 6+ years ago, I started that, and I don't feel like I've worked a day since. I work a lot harder than I've ever worked,
right.
But it's not work anymore. It's my passion, so I'm just doing what I do because that's who I am.
Right.
So, Nicolas, another thing I'm wondering is, right, we talked a little bit about what are some of the common items that you found through the data, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what are some of the, if we could kind of put those into categories of like a typical problem, right, that a project has? How do we, what are you finding with that, right? How does Steerio help solve those?
Actually, that's a very good question. What we see, the typical problem that's are related to stakeholder alignment, for example. I mentioned that earlier. We see a lot also about I would say complaints or negative remarks about decision making, and actually the ability of people to structure the decision process and to take decision within a meeting. And what is interesting is that most of the time when we see in our data that there is an issue with the ability to take decision, is because, for example, the decision is not well prepared. And this is some very interesting element that we see, and on which we help our client to move and to improve. Is that okay? They say, okay, I got an issue. On my project, we can make decision. Then we say, okay, do you manage properly the preparation of the decision? Do you send in advance or pre-read to the key stakeholders? Do you brief them before they have to take important decisions? And they say, that's a good point. And actually, that sounds like common sense, but actually those are typical small items that we identify, and then that can really help to improve the project. What we see as well, for example, is lack of inclusions between different work streams, for example. And that we see, for example, if you now we talk about a lot about technology, and the technology is not a project in itself. So working on an IT project is not all about IT. It's about organization, people, transformation, and business. And actually, how do you make working together, the IT work stream with the HR work stream, with the operations? And that's something that the tool helps to identify. And for example, 2 weeks ago, I was talking to one of my clients who is a senior PMO for a large transformation project. And he said, hey, that's what is very powerful with Steerio is that we could spot very early that there was an issue with the HR work stream, because the HR people were not involved in the transformation project. And we say, okay, oh my God, if you're on a transformation project and HR is not involved, then you might have a problem in 1 month or 2 months. And actually that's helped them to really clearly solve that and to implement very quickly mitigation action to include the HR people more strongly into the projects, and then to start implementing change management initiatives to help them to roll out the new organization. Those are typical elements that we see on a weekly basis on our projects.
Yeah, I know just from when I was using the tool, one thing that kind of jumped up and kind of smacked me in the face as we're using with the client was I was focused on our engagement as a whole, and I wasn't paying attention to some of the direct interactions with people. And that immediate feedback on a weekly basis to let me know that I may have had the executive stakeholders engaged, but there were team members that we were involved in that I wasn't keeping up to date. And I think it was from a change management perspective, from a communication perspective, an engagement and an empowerment perspective, all came into play. And it was obvious to me, not through my own observation, but through the use of the tool. So obviously, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You're welcome. And actually, I think so. And what is interesting is that your team need only 3 minutes per week to give you this very valuable feedback. So it goes very fast, but for you, it can be very powerful.
Invaluable feedback.
Well, one thing, and we're getting close to wrapping up the show, and before we get into final comments from both of you, I did want to write on PMO Joe, so I have to talk about PMO events that are happening in the world. And one item is the Global PMO Awards for 2019 have reached the final stage, and I was fortunate enough this year to be a judge for this. So the finalists were Angola, representing Africa, Brazil, representing the Americas, Slovenia, representing Europe, and Bahrain, representing Asia Pacific. And having judged that last week, I can say all of those PMOs are deserving of winning. It was an incredibly challenging opportunity and job to be able to pick the winner. I don't know who won. We will find out in October in London. They're going to announce the winners. And for those in the project management space, please take a moment to go out to pmoawards.org and see the different organizations that are participating. Next year will be our opportunity for you to potentially win the PMO of the award, global award. And what an opportunity to get exposure for what you and your team have built and the impact that you're making within your organization. So everybody take a moment and go check that out. All right. Thanks for giving me a moment to have that brief commercial and go talk about that. And now, again, as I said, the time goes by so fast on these shows, and I'm fascinated by both of these tools. So I want to give each of you a last opportunity to connect with the listeners, anything that we may not have covered today, and how they can reach you. So, Nicolas, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So first of all, again, thank you very much for the opportunity and for the great discussion we had. And actually, so looking forward to keeping in touch afterwards. About Steerio, if you want to try, if you are working on a project with more than 5 or 8 people, then and you think that you might need to get feedback from the team on a regular basis and leverage, I would say, the power of data and the collective intelligence that is around the team, then I really encourage the audience to try Steerio. And how do you find us? Basically, you just have to go on our website, so www.steerio.co, and just give a try to the tool and enjoy and see the impact on your team.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Nicolas. And Kathryn, any last items from you?
Yes. So when Nicolas was describing what he calls like the root issues of lack of success in project management and in these big, large transformational experiences, over the last 24 years, I've interviewed and facilitated discussions with thousands of executives. And what I find the number one root cause is their lack of clarity about what their objectives are. You'd be shocked at how many times I have to facilitate that discussion, almost cajole them to start articulating in ways that can be measurable. What's the due date? Sometimes they don't even have a sense of a due date, much less the quality metrics. So I just wanted to share that. So all my books are on Amazon. Kathryn Halpin, it's Kathryn, KATHARINE HALPIN. So you can find me on my author's page on Amazon, or you can find Alignment for Success, bringing out the best in yourself, your teams, and your company. My website is www.halpincompany.com, and my phone number is 602-266-1961. Like I said earlier, I have thousands of tools, and many of them are described in my book, but that CVI is really powerful. So I have that free version like that you took, Joe, so I'm happy to share that with anybody and send them the key.
Well, thank you so much, Kathryn and Nicolas, for joining us. Another great show. Obviously, thank you to our listeners. You're all helping us get the recognition that you all deserve. Just recently named the number 6 project management podcast on the web. Next year, we're shooting for top 5, and my producer and station owner here are shooting for number 1. Watch out, PMI, here we come. So our next show will be Thursday, August 15th with Colin Ellis and Deborah Hildebrand. We're not going to be at our typical time. Colin is joining us from Australia, so we're going to be at 3 p.m. Pacific time. So for those catching us live, just please adjust your calendars for the next show on the 15th. And after the 15th, we have some great guests lined up. Andy Jordan will join us from Honduras, Ray Reagan, Rich Maltzman, Jim Stewart, Laura Burford, Carol Osterwheel from England, and of course so many more scheduled throughout the course of the year. And we're on the second half of the year. It's amazing how fast this year is going. Also, a reminder that all of these shows are recorded, so please be sure to subscribe to Project Management Office Hours podcasts on Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, whatever your podcast platform of choice is. Of course, thank you to our sponsors, PM Master Prep and the PMO Squad. If you visit pmmasterprep.com, use promo code PMOJOE, and you'll receive 20% off all of their services. And, of course, you can visit thepmosquad.com to learn more about our services and especially the purpose-driven PMO. That's it for now. Office hours are closed. Until next time, I'm PMO Joe, and you've been listening to Project Management Office Hours.